tale of the big fluffy dog. There was an old woman who lived alone on an isolated farm in the countryside. The only companion she had was a big fluffy dog she kept for protection. One night, as she was clearing the table after dinner and washing the dishes, she heard a strange whistle. It seemed to be coming from somewhere outside. The odd whistling didn't sound familiar. The noise was nothing like the wind whistling through the trees or the whistle of a boiling kettle. It sounded human. Curious, the old woman rushed to the back door and looked out the window. Her big fluffy dog was on the back porch, and he was barking and howling at something in the darkness. The old woman cautiously opened the door. The eerie high-pitched whistle seemed to be coming from the moonlit hills. It sounded like it was getting closer. As she shut the back door, the old woman shuddered. She turned the key in the lock and fastened the bolt. Then, she ran to her bedroom and fetched her shotgun. When she got back to the kitchen, the whistle seemed to be even closer as she stood there trembling and listening intently. She thought she heard it moving slowly towards her house. On the back porch, her big fluffy dog was growling and gnarling its teeth at it in a frenzy. Just then, the lights went out, and she heard the sounds of a horrible struggle on the back porch. Seconds later, there was merely silence. The whistling sound was gone. The terrified old woman shook with fear. She was too frightened to move, and she spent the night lying on the kitchen floor, clutching her shotgun and listening to the eerie stillness that lasted until dawn. As soon as the sun rose, the old woman felt confident enough to open the back door and look outside. She was horrified by what she had found. The back steps were splattered with blood, and her big fluffy dog was nowhere to be seen. The tale of Clap, Clap. One day, a young married couple went hiking in the mountains. As the sun began to set, they realized that they were lost. The wife was getting worried, but her husband tried to calm her down and assured her that they would eventually find their way back to their car. However, after walking for hours, they still had no idea where they were. It was growing dark, and the man and wife were getting desperate. They didn't have a map or a compass with them, and all of the trees looked the same. Just when they were about to give up hope, they came across an old cabin in a clearing. The cabin looked as if it had seen better days. It was dilapidated and seemed like it hadn't been used in a very long time. Some of the windows were cracked and broken, and a lot of the tiles had fallen off the roof. The husband knocked on the front door, but there was no response. When he turned the handle, it slowly creaked open. Inside, they found it was in a bad state of disrepair. There was very little furniture, and the floor was covered in a thick layer of dust. As the couple cautiously looked around, they noticed a strange atmosphere and a peculiar musty smell. The walls were covered from floor to ceiling with graffiti. Written in red paint, the words, "Death," over and over, repeating. The man and woman were unnerved. With a shaking hand, the husband reached out to touch the wall. He was horrified to find that the paint was not yet dry. The couple were very frightened, but they had nowhere else to go. They knew that the mountain was dangerous at night, and there were lots of wild animals prowling the woods. Despite the creepy writing on the wall, they decided to stay the night. Going upstairs, they found a moth-eaten mattress that was covered in stains. The husband and wife wrapped themselves in an old piece of carpet to keep warm and tried to make themselves as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. They lay down together on the mattress and eventually managed to fall asleep. Sometime after midnight, the couple were awakened by a strange rustling noise. It sounded like someone, or something, was moving around outside the shack. "Did you hear that?" asked his wife. "I think there's somebody out there." Her husband listened for a while, but he didn't hear anything. He got out of bed and walked over to the window. It was too dark outside to see anything. Opening the window, he stuck his head out. "Who's there?" he called nervously. There was no answer. He was about to go back to bed when his wife said, "Maybe it's someone who can't speak." The husband returned to the window and said, "Is there anybody out there? Clap once for yes and twice for no." He strained his ears to listen. The stars twinkled in the night sky. The crickets were chirping loudly. All of a sudden, he heard a loud clap. The man turned to his wife and said in surprise, "You were right. There's someone out there." He leaned out the window and his eyes scanned the darkness. He couldn't make out anything in the pitch black. "Are you the owner of this cabin?" he asked. Clap, clap. "Are you a man?" Clap, clap. "You're a woman then?" Clap, clap. "Are you human?" Clap, clap. A chill ran down his spine. He swallowed hard and croaked, "Did you come here alone?" Clap, clap. "So? How many are with you? Clap once for each person." The tale of the dark lake. Samantha had two best friends named Jenny and Amber. Her father was taking her on a weekend vacation, and she invited them to come along. Her family owned a cabin in the woods, and on a Friday evening, her father drove the girls up there. "You see that lake?" asked Samantha when they arrived. That's Lake Samantha. My dad grew up here. He loved it so much, he named me after it. That night, after they had all unpacked their things, the three girls sat around and thought of ways to amuse themselves. Does anyone have any spooky stories? Asked Amber. I have one, said Jenny. It's a true story, too. It happened to a friend of mine. She was babysitting these two little kids one night. She's sitting in the dark by herself watching TV, and the phone rings. She goes over and answers it, and hears a voice on the other end breathing really heavy, and it says, "Have you checked on the children?" Oh, Jenny, come on, Amber interrupted. Everybody's heard that one. That's the lamest scary story ever. Does anyone else have a story? One that's actually true? I know one, Samantha said. About 10 minutes hike from here, there's an old broken down house. We passed it on the way up here. It's out in the middle of nowhere, tucked away off a narrow little side road. A long time ago, a man lived there. His family were really wealthy and they owned hundreds of acres of land around here. This man met a simple country girl from a simple country town, and they fell deeply in love. His family wasn't too happy about it. They didn't think the girl was good enough for him, but he ignored them. He was an independent type of guy, and he went off and built a little house on a chunk of their land, out in the middle of nowhere. He married this girl and everything was wonderful. They had a daughter and eventually they had a son too. This is where the story starts to go bad. Their son was sick. Not physically, but mentally. He was sick in the head. He wasn't mentally disabled or anything. He was just a little off. By the time he was 9 years old, he became too much for his parents to handle, throwing temper tantrums, erratic sleeping patterns, disappearing into the woods and hiding, that kind of thing. Not knowing what to do about his son, the man turned to his family for help. His parents had the boy taken away. They sent him to a place deep in the woods. It wasn't an insane asylum, but it did cater to people with special needs, if you know what I mean. His parents thought it was best. Over time, the family got used to not having him around. They gradually stopped visiting him. They functioned as if they had never even had a son, and everything went back to being wonderful again. 8 years later, the boy, who was about 16 or 17 at this time, managed to escape from the hospital. The staff did a search, but he was nowhere to be found. His family was notified and they were devastated. They were worried for his safety. He had been alone in the wilderness for weeks, and he was probably dead. But the boy wasn't dead. One night, he found his way back home. He crept into his house, and one by one, he slaughtered his entire family. His father, his mother, his sister, all of them chopped into little pieces. With the blood still dripping from his axe, he disappeared into the woods. When the grisly remains of his family were discovered a few days later, the townsfolk in the surrounding area were horrified. The police tried to find the boy, but it was no use. To this day, he has never been found. Since then, every year, around harvest time, people have started to go missing. And in their place, a corn husk doll would be left behind. Legend has it, the boy still roams the woods around these parts. The surrounding towns have bought into the legend, and they hang dolls by their front door for protection. They say, if the boy sees a doll hanging from the door of a house, he will pass that house by and leave the residents in peace. Nobody truly knows if it's true or not, but there's a doll hanging from the door of every house in town. That's so creepy, cried Jenny. Do you have a doll on your door? Of course, said Samantha. My dad says he doesn't believe the legend, but we hung one just in case. I think I just peed myself, said Amber. Apparently the house is still haunted by the ghosts of his murdered family, and if you go up there late at night, you can hear the whole thing take place all over again. Do you think we could go up there? Jenny asked. Sure, said Samantha. But tomorrow, during daylight, there's no sense in tempting fate. That night, the girls slept in the same room and huddled together, trying to pretend they weren't frightened by the story and expecting to hear something tapping at the window at any moment. The next morning, Samantha's father made them all a big breakfast, and they went down to the lake for a swim. Around noon, they decided to make the trip up to the old haunted house. When they got there, the girls sensed an eerie presence in the old, dilapidated place. It was enough to make their skin crawl. They explored the ruins of the old house, peeking into corners and sifting through the rubble. After a while, Samantha spotted something half buried in the dirt. It was some sort of book. She dug it out and dusted it off. The girls gathered around as she opened it and began to flip through the yellowed pages. It's like a diary or something, said Samantha. Maybe it's his diary, Jenny whispered. Whose diary? Asked Amber. The guy, said Jenny. You know, the guy that killed his family. Samantha read the diary aloud as the others listened. There's a dedication inscribed inside the cover, she said. It reads, "To my family who I love and cherish, and who will always be with me. September 5th, 1987. It has been hard alone. All they had to do was talk to me. They could not talk to me. I hear their voices late at night sometimes. I hear their screams. It's cold and dark. I needed love. They did not love me. The medicines are gone. I am free. Free from all of them. If they could not love me, they had to go. Dark sleep for everyone. I hear their voices still, always screaming. December 4th, 1987. They've stopped looking for me. It is okay for me now. I live in the forest. I chase down the animals and put them in dark sleep, just like Mom and Dad and Sis. I visit my old house at night. I listen to the voices. At least they talk to me now. October 3rd, 1995. I left the forest years ago and moved to a small town nearby. Nobody recognizes me. No one knows who I am. I hear people telling my story sometimes. It makes me laugh inside. They all fear me. I still come to the forest sometimes. I spend the nights in my old house. Mom and Dad still talk to me. They say they are very proud of me. November 2nd, 1998. Life has been good. I found a job. I bought a house. I even met a girl. She's very quiet and pretty. Sometimes I bring her to the forest. She likes it. I let Mom and Dad see her. They like her. July 1st, 2000. Today is a great day. I have a baby now. I am so happy. Mom and Dad are grandparents now. My wife isn't doing so well though. It was hard for her. She might not make it. Maybe she too will go into a dark sleep. I am happy now. August 13th, 2010. I am so proud of my child. She is just like me, except she is much smarter. She has no problems. She doesn't hear the voices. She goes to school and has lots of friends. Not like me. Sometimes I take her to the woods. I love her so much. I named her after the lake. Samantha. For a few moments after Samantha stopped reading, there was a stunned silence. What the heck? cried Jenny. Samantha, is this some sort of joke? Amber asked nervously. Because it isn't funny. This can't be true, Samantha whispered. It couldn't possibly be. Just then, they heard the sounds of twigs snapping behind them. When they turned around, they saw Samantha's father standing there. There was this strange, pained look on his face, and he was holding an axe in his hands. You weren't supposed to find that, he muttered. There's no other way now. Dark sleep for everyone. No, Dad, Samantha screamed. No, 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 no. When Samantha's father had finished chopping up the bodies, he put the pieces in large plastic bags and buried them deep in the woods. So deep that no one would ever find them. Now, they could be together forever. I'll watch over you now, he mumbled as he patted down the earth with his shovel. You may not understand now, but you will in time. This is the only way for us to be together. Dark sleep forever. We all stay together.